Hi, this is Blake, and I'm going to walk you through the steps to get a copy of Mapbox's RobotSat software up and running on your desktop in a virtual machine. So the only thing that I'm going to assume that you've done before we start walking through this, and this should only take about 10 or 15 minutes of video time, that'll probably take on your end on the order of 30 to 45 minutes. So the only thing that we ask that you already have done is downloaded the VirtualBox software and installed it on your machine. So you're almost always going to want to download whatever it suggests that you download. You're going to be running it on a Windows host. I hope that's what we're going to be doing this on. And this is going to download what you need so that you can run the installer. Please have done that before you start following this tutorial. And the other thing that we need you to have done before you start following this tutorial is get the disk image for installing Ubuntu 16.04.3. This is exactly like regular Ubuntu, except it has a really lightweight user interface, so it runs much better in a virtual machine, which is pretty tight on resources. So you're just going to want to download the desktop 64-bit version, and you can just click on this and it'll start downloading. So please have downloaded both of those things before you get started, and with that we're going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to assume that you have run the installer for the Oracle VirtualBox software, and you have a screen that looks something like this, and you probably don't have any existing virtual machines. But we're going to go ahead and say create a new virtual machine, and I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it Ubuntu 16.0.04.3, and it's RobotSat. Whoops, I put a little extra zero in there, huh? And it's RobotSat. And so this is not supposed to be a Microsoft Windows version. This is going to be a Linux, and it's going to be an Ubuntu 64-bit. So make sure it says this before you're all done. Oftentimes it figures it out. I probably misspelled this. But I'm going to go ahead and say next. And it's going to ask me how much RAM I want to allocate. You know, you're going to want to give it at least 3 gigs of RAM. If you have more RAM, the more RAM you can give it, the better. But I'm going to give it 3 gigs as a minimum. I'm going to say next. I'm going to say create a virtual hard disk now. And I'm going to do the default VirtualBox disk image. I'm going to do fixed size. We're trying to make sure this thing operates as fast as possible. A fixed size operates as fast as it possibly can. I'm going to say next. And you want to make this, for the sake of this demo, I'm going to just leave it at 10 gigs, but you really want this to be 20 gigs at a minimum. That gives you enough room for the operating system and files to actually work on. The default of 10 gigs is pretty short. So I'm going to just go ahead and say create. I guess I'll create a 20 gig one just to do it right. And so now it's going to create a file. This can take anywhere up to probably 5 minutes depending on the machine that you're doing it on. So I'm just going to pause the video, and I'll be back when it's done creating this disk image file. So we're back, and when that completes, it just brings you to this screen. So 2 important settings. All we've done is created a hard drive. We're going to install an operating system on it in a second, but just so we don't forget, there's some important settings that we want to set. So I just clicked on Settings, the General tab, Advanced. You want to make sure that you share the clipboard bi-directional. And this way you can copy and paste between your virtual machine and your regular desktop. And we'll do this a lot, so make sure that's enabled. And then the other thing that you typically want to do is you want to come down to Shared Folders, and you want to add a shared folder. And this will let your Linux environment access your Windows desktop. And I usually just set mine to my Downloads folder, because it seems like everything ends up in my Downloads folder anyway. So now I can get to my Downloads folder from inside my virtual machine, and I want to auto mount this. So with those 2 things set, we can say OK. There's some other settings you could adjust, but that will do. So now remember, we downloaded the Ubuntu desktop installer ISO before we got started, so we have that file someplace. So I'm going to go ahead and power this thing up, and it has no operating system. So the first thing it's going to do is ask me for this ISO file that'll then boot like a CD, and we'll run the install, and then we'll be ready to go. So this is the one that I just downloaded, the 16.04.3. So that's the one that I'm going to mount, and I'm going to say Start. And this is just like booting your machine from a CD, except we're doing a virtual machine. And it'll start the install process. You want to use the down arrow we want to do, you see how you can choose from this list, we want to do install Ubuntu. Like booting off of any CD, it takes a minute. So this thing will get booted up, and now we'll be running the installation process. And as soon as we get it underway, I'll go ahead and pause this and pick up when it's done. So you can just pretty much default through these probably. So I'm English. You'll notice we'll have a problem with these buttons, and I'll show you how to work around that. But continue is always the far button. You don't want to do either one of these. Don't download, don't do third party. We're going to erase the disk and install Ubuntu. That's that 20 gig disk we created a little while ago. This is always correct. This is okay. You don't have to sweat it. You can say continue. And now it's going to launch the installer. I'm going to set my time zone. And now it's going to launch the installer for Ubuntu. And I'm going to have to detect the, don't do the detect keyboard, just try and pick it. But here you can see I can't see the buttons for continue. So you just need to tab carefully. And so you tab to this button, which is not the right button. So then you tab one more time so it's deselected and hit return, and that will continue to the next screen. My name is BG, and you should pick some highly secure password. And then again, this is not the correct button. I need to tab. Now it's selected. I tab one more time. Now this is the continue button, and I hit enter. And this launches the installation process, and I'm going to let that run, and then I'll pick it back up when this is complete. I don't think there's any interaction between now and the end of the install. So I'm back. This is how that installation process ended for me, and I'm just going to say restart now. It'll ask me to remove the installation media, but you don't really have to do it. You can just hit enter, and it'll reboot, and now it'll be booting off of that hard drive file you created earlier. The 20 gig hard drive file now has the operating system installed on it, and that operating system is Ubuntu, and it's launching. And so it's asking me to log in. The very first thing that I suggest you do is come down to this start menu and go to System Tools, and I'm just hovering over this, and then right click on this and say Add to Desktop, because virtually everything we are going to do is going to be in the terminal. So this might as well be right here, ready for you to go. Let's see here. So I really think that once you're at this stage, you're literally 6 commands away from, following those tutorials and using all the same commands in the same environment. And so the very first thing that we need to do is update and upgrade the system software. And there'll actually be a message here, I'm sure, from the operating system telling me that I need to do this. And we're going to say remind me later, because we're just going to do it manually at the terminal here. So I highlighted over here and I copied sudo apt-get update. That's the first command that we have to run, and I'm just going to paste it in, and it doesn't paste in, so I'll just type it in by hand. Sudo apt-get update. And it's going to ask for the password I created, but it only asks once every 15 or 20 minutes. This updates the list of available software to the latest versions, and then the next step will actually go through and compare what we have to what's on those lists and upgrade everything. Sudo apt-get upgrade. So it does the compare, and it says, oh, we need about 218 megs worth of stuff. This is going to take a while, but you can generally just say yes and hit return, and it knows what it's doing pretty well. And I'll be back when it's done. It should be about 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, and we're back, and hopefully yours ran through and it ended up looking exactly the same way. So just to recap what we've done, you downloaded the VirtualBox. Let's see if I can get this to happen for me. You downloaded the Oracle VirtualBox virtual machine software, and you also downloaded the install disk for the Ubuntu operating system, and then you used the VirtualBox manager, you said new, and you created a new empty hard drive, and then you booted it off of the disk that you downloaded from Ubuntu, and you installed all of that software so that now you have a Linux operating system, specifically Ubuntu. And then you did update and upgrade, which updated and upgraded all of the software in that operating system. And that's where you've gotten. So you've essentially just gotten your dev environment completely set up, and, well, not quite completely set up, but certainly a very fresh install of this particular version of Ubuntu. And from here, we're going to move on to actually dealing with the RobotSat software. So again, I would refer back to these 6 lines, and we've already done the first 2 lines. And so now we need to install Mapbox. The team at Mapbox has done an amazing job of packaging this up via Docker container, which lets us essentially download another image, and then once we start that thing up, it's exactly the environment that we need to run all of their software. So it's really handy. So I'm just going to go ahead and type these commands in. So I need to install the Docker container environment, and once I do that, then I'll start to be able to issue some Docker commands, and that'll get this system up and running for us. So the first thing I need to install is the docker.io software. And so, I do this sudo apt-get install docker.io. It may have asked me for my password, and it tells me again, it knows pretty well what to do, what it's going to have to install, and tells you a little bit of information. So I'm just going to say yes, go ahead and install that, and I'll be back when it's done. And we're back, and again it just says done, and there were no errors, and this is typically how installs go when things are going right. So this is great. That Docker environment is installed. So now I'm just going to go ahead and move my screen a little bit because it's time to type in some of these Docker commands. So I installed the docker.io container environment, and so now this is the package that Mapbox put together for us. Mapbox Robosat, and then latest CPU. And we're using CPU because we're in a virtual environment and we don't have access to a GPU of any sort. So anything we did, we probably wouldn't train a model on this, but everything else we can do just fine. We just need to make sure the CPU version is installed because a virtual machine doesn't have a graphics card. So I'm just going to type these commands in. Sudo docker pull mapbox, no forward slash, mapbox / robosat latest -CPU. And this is a download process, and this is downloading probably close to another gig's worth of data. And then there's a little bit of an install, because like I said, it's essentially downloading an image of the exact environment you need with this software running on it. So it's going to take a minute. So I'll be back when this is done downloading, but this should just download and the installation should complete, and then I'll be back. And we're back, and this is what it looks like when it was done doing the Docker pull. And again, this pulls down the Docker container image that Mapbox has made available that has all of the RobotSat software installed on it. So let's get back to our magic 6 commands here. And so I just did the RobotSat latest pull. And so now I need to do sudo docker images. And this is a Docker command that shows the images that I've downloaded. I should only have one. It's the Mapbox one. So I just say images, and this is just going to list what I have. And so the number that's important to me is this image ID number. And I'm going to do a copy here. This will work in this. And so then I'm going to issue this next command. And what this next command is going to do is it's going to launch the Docker container, and it's going to put us in that Docker container command line. So let's do that. And so that's the first part about this command. I'm just getting it from up here in the corner. And so now I need to put in this image ID, which I've copied, and I now should be able to paste. And what this should do is you'll notice that my command line will change. So I'm going to go ahead and hit return, and you'll see my command line changes if everything goes right. And my command line did change. So now you can see I'm logged in as root, and I'm in a directory called app. And if I do the ls command, which lists the directory, If I do the ls command, I can see that now there's a program called rs. So when you read through the blog posts from Daniel and Manning, all the rs extract, rs convert or cover, now you can do all that same stuff here. You are in the RobotSat environment, and you can start, like I said, not really training models, although for sure I'm going to try it and see how long it takes, but you can do everything but train the model, and we can figure out how to train the model shortly. So I'm just going to do rs-h, which is the RobotSat-help, and this lists all the tools. You'll notice all of these match those blog posts, and so now I can do all of these. /rs extract. In this case, it'll probably just error and tell me what I'm supposed to do. So you can also do any of these with the -h command and get some helpful information about the parameters that are supposed to be on there. But that's it. You're up and running with RobotSat. So however long that took, easy to get back here with these virtual machines. Congratulations and thank you very much.